Yo, this is Saint Sergi, and you're now listening to Valley Views on 101.5 FM. Check it out.
And now you are tuned in to Valley Views with your host, Hector.
Yo, it's Fernando. Shouts out to Valley Views, man. They played me on the station. I was like, let me make you a jingle. So this is my jingle I made for them. This is what I had to do. This is Valley Views. This is what I had to do. This is Valley Views. Come and sing it like, eh, eh, eh. So what you want? Come and sing it like, eh, eh, eh. So what you want? Come and sing it like, eh, eh, eh.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending when and where you're listening to Valley Views. I am your host, Hector, here of Valley Views. And today on this lovely Thursday, April 28th, 2022, we have our Meet the Candidates 2022 series in full effect. We're continuing this series, and really the mission and the vision behind this particular Meet the Candidates 2022 series for the primary elections happening June 7th, 2022 is really to just give our audience and our community a chance to listen to as many candidates that are running for a variety of offices, both federal, state, county, and local offices that have the potential to impact all of our communities here in the San Fernando Valley and beyond. And with that said, I want to really also say that Valley Views and KROJ do not endorse any political candidates or campaign. We are strictly here just to really get to know some of the candidates. And we're going to go ahead and start that tonight. With that said, we have today here with us Craig Greiwe, who is a candidate running for the LA City Mayor's office. And with that said, first of all, Craig, welcome to the show, Valley Views Meet the Candidate Series. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you so much for doing this. It's so important for people to be able to just hear directly from folks. And so I so appreciate the work that you're doing. Thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. And, I want to go ahead and really just start getting straight into this. And first, Craig, I just wanted to just ask you really, why did you decide to put your name in the hat and run for the mayoral seat here in Los Angeles?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good question. The fact is, no one in their right mind should ever want to run for office. We make it that difficult, and it's that crazy, which is why this city has been governed by the same people for 30 years. And I come from a successful 20 years in business, solving some of the most complex problems for some of America's most trusted companies, for huge companies, many times bigger than LA. Verizon, MasterCard, the late Kobe Bryant. And I had no intention of ever running for office, but it became clear late last year that the only people who were going to run for this office were career insiders and career politicians who have been cycling through office for decades. And we see their track record on their streets. This city needs a true outsider, not a pretend outsider, a true outsider focused on common ground and common sense. And there wasn't that in the race. So I stepped in. When I stepped in, I was the only candidate with concrete, published, vetted plans in homelessness, affordability, crime, corruption. I'm still the only candidate with concrete, vetted, written plans in all of those issues, along now with veterans, working families, so many different areas. But it really came down to the fact that we have a choice. We can do more of the same, which has led us where we are. And I don't think there's anybody in LA happy with the state of the city. Or we can break with the past and choose a bold, fresh voice. And that's the candidate that I've pledged to be. That's the mayor that I've pledged to be.
Yeah, and let's get into this as well then. So, one of the things here in our city, of course, that really has been something that we've seen, and it's only been amplified by the pandemic, is related to our unhoused neighbors and just in general, the homelessness emergency really that we've had here in our city. And it's, hit all parts of our city, right? It's here in the San Fernando Valley, as well as, mid-city. I mean, you name it, right? It's really a issue that has had such a big impact. And so what are some of your plans as far as from the seat, right, from the mayor's seat, that you would like to tackle on if, you become mayor after June 7th?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we got to be honest about the scale of this crisis and the people struggling in the city. I know what it's like to struggle. I grew up dirt poor and abandoned at the age of 14. I know what it's like to stare down the barrel of homelessness and not know what to do. The reality is that we've had this problem for decades. The only reason we're talking about it now is because it finally crept into the backyards of wealthy donors, of politicians who wanted to avoid it. This is 60,000 people. It's a football stadium-sized problem in a county of 10 million. This is solvable. The dirty little secret of Los Angeles is that homelessness is being eradicated across America. In fact, 14 municipalities have moved to zero homelessness, 98 more on the way. There is a roadmap to ending homelessness. And if you want to know the difference between me and every other candidate wants to double down on the failed programs that have led us where we are in Los Angeles, while I'm the only candidate with a written published plan based on what has worked across this country, what is working in hundreds of cities to move us to functional zero homelessness. Real-time data, a 24/7 hotline to ensure that if you have a home today, you have a home tomorrow, and concrete solutions to get people off the streets, make sure they get the help and are required to get the help that they need by focusing on immediate and transitional housing instead of billion-dollar boondoggles and permanent supportive housing. Some people will need permanent supportive housing, but we don't know who and how many. And right now, you can't justify paying $1 million a unit in construction costs when 70% of Angelenos have to struggle to make their rent or their mortgage. It's unconscionable. So my program is focused on what works, and it is focused not just on an emergency, but on declaring a federal emergency so that we can use federal law to override corrupt local officials who want to keep this crisis going to line the pockets of them and their friends. I will invoke federal law rather than consolidating power, because I'm not interested in consolidating power. I'm interested in solving the problem.
Yes, and I feel like there's definitely been, so many different entities that are involved with, our unhoused neighbors. And we have another thing that some folks here in the San Fernando Valley, it's at times it's been controversial, and that is, like, for example, tiny homes, and it's not a permanent solution. So can you just give us just a little extra details in as far as, like, what are some of the steps that you would see yourself taking forward, right, when it comes to, for example, things like permanent supportive housing and other types of transitional support housing as well?
Yeah. So there's two key aspects to that, right? One of which is we need a 24/7 hotline to prevent new people from becoming homeless. If you are facing homelessness, right now you have no place to call, no place to go for help. There should be a hotline that you can call and somebody on site the next day who will work with you to keep you in your home. Because it takes a few $100 to keep you in your home, and it takes the city $2 million to get you off the street, right? Like, this city's making a $2 million mistake every day instead of a $200 solution. And then when you're talking about the people on the street, yes, the tiny homes, transitional supportive housing, you can read all of it. Like, I go into extraordinary detail on my website at craigformayor.com, but it's 20,000 semi-private shelter-based beds and 10,000 transitional supportive housing units, including, yes, some tiny homes, and then 12,000 shared collaborative housing units where people with light mental health or addiction issues live together, because it's proven to work with a 90% effectiveness rating to keep them clean. And then 5,000 new residential mental health beds at 1200 State Street, a building that's already built for that purpose. None of this massed near residential areas, right? The reality is that we have lots of space to place people. And I will work directly with FEMA under our federal disaster declaration to do that. We need to remember that when FEMA was at its worst in the aftermath of the Hurricane Katrina crisis, they housed 10 times as many people as are homeless in LA in under a year. This problem is solvable. It's been solved time and time again. It's being solved across America, but it's not solved when we just let our career politicians spend out the end. You look at tiny homes, right? We know from every other city that uses them that they are supposed to cost in construction and services and surrounding services, all of the job training, everything, $30,000 per person a year. In LA, we spend $130,000 a year. That extra $100,000 isn't going to help people. It's lining pockets. My plan actually moves us away towards that, towards real concrete solutions with cost caps using federal law.
Yes, and again, like you said, about 60,000, of our unhoused homeless neighbors. And so, thank you for explaining a little bit more of that plan. And now let's move into a little bit related to housing as well, but now just housing in general. As we know, all throughout LA, the affordability, just affordable housing in general. We're talking about, just single homes or renters. It's becoming more and more less and less affordable, and you have more folks that have less and less options. And so, what do you think that the city of LA can do? Because we do see developments and we see construction of apartment buildings. We see a lot of these 5-story buildings, and then a couple of commercial sites on the first floor, and but that are very unaffordable for Angelenos. What do you think the city can do to really help alleviate this housing crisis, really, for so many Angelenos?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that we've got to acknowledge, right? You ask every other candidate about affordability, and they'll start talking about permanent supportive housing and homelessness. The two are separate, right? Think about the 3.9 million people in this city who are not homeless and find it unaffordable. We've got to serve those people. I am the only candidate. Literally, this is shocking to me. Even the developer in the race doesn't have this plan. I am the only candidate with a written plan to build a more affordable city. Here's the fundamental truth. When we stop looking at the lies, LA has only built 13% of its housing capacity in the last 30 years, which means we don't have enough room for people who lived here in 1991, let alone in 2022. We've got to build more housing. But I'm also the only candidate with a concrete plan to do that while preserving every neighborhood and community, making sure that people don't get priced out of their communities, and while pledging to protect single-family home zoning. You cannot just simply eradicate every home and say, well, now you can turn every lot into 4 houses, or now that's not how it works. The reality is we have plenty of space. If you took, there are these things called latent industrial zones. They're zoned for factory usage, and they're all just lying fallow throughout the city. If you took every latent industrial zone, every industrial zone that's not currently being used, and you allowed construction of live, work, play, mixed use development on what used to be a factory site, you'd be able to build 1 million units, right? Without disturbing the character of any neighborhood and community. You'd actually be able to bring people in so that they could afford to live, work, and play in communities and neighborhoods that are incredible. We don't allow that to happen. So the only thing that gets built is the stuff that's really expensive, because it's the only thing that makes sense financially for a developer. Housing is not unaffordable because developers. Rent is not high because of your landlord. It's high because of the government. It's high because of bad government policy. Our zoning code was written in 1946 and hasn't been changed since. It's not 1946 anymore. I have concrete plans where we are able to, for example, with latent industrial zones, transitioning that into live, work, play, building higher density where it makes sense along thoroughfares, not in the middle of communities, right? I am the only person to pledge to preserve, to protect every neighborhood and community while having a plan to build 500,000 units, which means that within 10 years, I know this sounds fantastical, but the economics, the math show that this is right. Within 10 years, no Angeleno will have to pay more than 30% of their income in rent.
Yes, that's just a very interesting plan there, and a very ambitious one as well. And I wanted to just kind of move here into public safety and just in general. There was a big reckoning back in 2020 here, really all across the nation, but really here in the city of LA as well, related to the Black Lives Matter movement, but then also currently, this there's been a lot of reports of, in general, certain crime going up, but then you also have constituents that are not very trustworthy of LAPD. So although there are very, at times separate buckets, if you will, at times, they do merge. But what do you see as far as what the city can do to both deal with the racial injustices really happening across our city, at times the mistrust of LAPD, and just public safety in general?
Yeah, I think I'm going to split that into 2 parts, right? Let's talk about the trust with communities and the mistrust of law enforcement. Let's talk about what it means to keep people safe. The first is the trust with communities. It's been 2 years and we've done absolutely nothing, right? Let's be honest. Like, our leaders marched and did nothing, right? The reality is that we've known what to do to build a fairer system for everybody, to build trust for years. This isn't new. In 2015, President Obama's Department of Justice put together a bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats, a bipartisan community-oriented policing solutions report that was a roadmap for how to build trust and build a safer relationship, a healthy relationship with law enforcement. And LA has enacted exactly zero of it. I don't need someone talking about authoring the George Floyd and Policing Act, which never came to a vote. That person, that other candidate, authored something that never happened. There is actually already a roadmap. We don't need new answers. Obama's administration gave us a bipartisan roadmap, and I will implement those solutions immediately, including helping to make sure that officers are a part of the communities that they serve, because that is the number one way to build trust. But they can't afford to live in the communities they serve right now, so how can you even expect that? Right? The reality is that we've got to build trust. We've got to fully fund a nonviolent community engagement force focused on mental health, addiction, dispute resolution. We've got to do that separate from the police. You don't defund the police. Defunding the police is lunacy. It just creates enemies. Fully fund a nonviolent community engagement force. Fully fund people who are out building relationships in the community. And then, yes, it also comes with allowing police to focus on police work. Right now, 34% of police time is dealing with homelessness. That is the equivalent of taking 3,000 officers off the streets. Any other candidate who's pledging to hire a single new officer is lying to you, because we cannot even hire for the positions we have open. They are actually lying because we know that we can't hire for those positions, and we don't need to hire new police officers. We need to take the 3,000 officers who are dealing with homelessness every day and put them back on patrol, and focused on police work, focused on building relationships with communities. Because when they're running from homeless encampment to fire to other call, and they're stretched so thin, we ask them to show up for every fender bender. They don't have any time to get to know the people that they serve. My plan allows people to actually build relationships with a nonviolent community engagement force, allows us to make real meaningful progress in eliminating bias and building trust, and puts 3,000 officers back on patrol without spending a single additional dollar. What people need to realize, and it's not just the police. This city is spending 30% of its income, $3 billion, on 60,000 homeless people, while 3.9 million have to split the rest. Now, we need to help the unhoused, we need to help the homeless, but it is unconscionable that we are spending 30% of our city resources on 60,000 people, $3 billion on 60,000 people a year, while the rest of us struggle. And my plan is the only plan that fixes that returns this city to a fair share for every citizen and helps get people the help that they need.
And I just wanted to just kind of transition here to a couple more questions before our interview time here is over. But I wanted to talk to you about, what do you think it's going to take to continue to move our city in a direction that's, 21st century, equivalent, if you will, with modernization projects, while also keeping in mind, climate change and the impact that has within, our city as well?
I think in order to move into the 21st century, you've got to elect leaders for the 21st century. And right now, every other candidate in this race is from the 20th century, right? Like, they're from the wrong century. So we've got to choose bold, new leadership. And leadership who is creative with bold ideas. And then we've got to create programs that empower people. We put in, a plan to say that we wanted to be a carbonless city by 2035, but there's no actual plan to execute that. What it does is it puts the burden on everyday businesses, on everyday people to figure it out. That's not the way this should work. Government should say, listen, we're here to help. Here's 0 interest loans so that you can modernize your business. Here's small business innovation grants so that you can modernize your business. Here's everything that you need to do. 4% of the buildings in Los Angeles consume 50% of our energy. So let's focus on those 4%, right? It's just common sense. We know what we need to do to build a 21st century city. Everybody who's talking about broadband is missing the boat. They're building a cement boat for the wrong century. We should be talking about what 5G will be in 2030, because it makes broadband essentially useless, right? So we're building things for a future that isn't coming, for the wrong future. We've got to have somebody. My job was literally to know what was coming down the pipeline 10 years from now and to counsel America's largest corporations on how to get there. It's exactly what I plan to do as mayor.
And lastly here, you have about 60 seconds or so, just closing remarks.
Yeah, listen, I recognize that a lot of people out there think that this can be Rick versus Karen or career insiders versus career politicians, but it doesn't have to be. This is not a choice between bad and worse. I am a fresh, bold voice. I am Craig Greiwe. I am a business executive with a proven track record of delivering results for companies many times larger than Los Angeles. And I'm running to be a bold, fresh voice for your mayor. Go to craigformayor.com. Follow me on social at Craig for Mayor LA. And know this. We can break from the past, but you've got to be a part of that. You've got to support that break and join my campaign.
All right. Well, once again, we've had here with us Craig Greiwe, candidate for LA City Mayor's Office. Thank you so much, Craig, for speaking with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a privilege.
Great. And we'll be right back here after a musical break. And we'll be tuning in here on 101.5 FM KROJ.
Thank you for listening to Valley Views on Radio Ole, 101.5 FM KROJ. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Valley Views SFB. For all of our past episodes, check out our SoundCloud podcast at soundcloud.com/Valley Views.